We are being hypnotized by people like this. Newsreaders, politicians, teachers, lecturers. We are in a country and in a world that is being run by unbelievably sick people. The chasm between what we're told is going on and what is really going on is absolutely enormous.
Oh yeah, dude. There's some Nephilim shit.
It's like we all know what's going down, but no one's saying shit what happened to the home of the brave. These motherfuckers, they controlling us now, and no one's talking about how they made us fight to be slaves. And everybody's just walking around, head in the clouds, and won't awaken to a dead in the grave. But then it's too late, we need to be ready to raise up. Welcome to the end of days. Everybody is slaves, only some are aware that the government releasing poison.
Welcome back, guys, to another episode of Nephilim Death Squad, the show where we hunt down and expose Nephilim shit. I am David Lee Corbo, a.k.a. The Raven. That is Top Lobster. And we are joined here today by none other than Thomas, the Paranoid American. How are you, brother?
Good. Actually, I heard we were killing Nephilim. I didn't think we were just tracking them down and exposing them.
Whoa,
this
whoa,
is the
whoa.
Death
Easy.
Squad, right?
Easy with the Fed
Jeez,
posting
man.
over here, dude. Like, everybody knows Nephilim is short for a little, little schnozzers. No. Yo, dude. We're off to a bad start. I'm sorry.
We're immediately getting banned.
Is this good to mention the new HelloFresh sponsorship?
No, not a good time. We got to wait a little bit
Okay.
before we get back into that one. But look, dude, we the first part of hunting them is following the trail and exposing them. And then once it becomes socially acceptable to say things like, kill Nephilim. But until then, I think there's probably going to be some sort of YouTube sponsor or a censor rather that's going to pull us off. But
Dude,
anyway,
what if this
Oh,
world
sorry.
gets to a
Did I
point-
just come out of the gate hot?
No,
unbelievable, dude.
You got me thinking now. Because like everyone's trying to accept the next person. There's like laws and shit. Like, what if when the Nephilim reveal themselves and there's like this tribulation of however many years and they're just like
They're a
giants
protected
walking.
class.
Yeah, but like California's like, listen, we got to respect the giants. We can't keep calling for their genocide. And they have like a fucking giant flag. Yo, dude, it's probably going to get that ridiculously stupid in our lifetime.
We can't
I don't think that's
move them
stupid.
from the front of CVS. We have to let them take as much as they want. As long as it's less than $1,000, the Nephilim can take whatever they want. As long as it's one child per household, the Nephilim can take whatever they want.
Jesus Christ.
It's funny though because like that's kind of how it really would be, right? So because the Nephilim get to make the decision, and we live in this weird culture where the oldest like information rules sometimes, even if it's not necessarily right, but it's always like, oh, this dude said that first, or this religion had that first, and the implication by just saying that is that the older you go, the more correct or the more accurate it is, right? So really, you could be like, oh, if you're Nephilim giants, I guess you were here first. You're like the OG native whatever akins that you're on, right? Like they would be the OG Native Americans, the OG whoever was in the sacred land, right? They could be like, technically we were here first. You know what I mean?
It's
So-
again, I don't want to go too like political, but it is like the Jewish people, like they've got all this power, and in after this, like when the Nephilim are here, they will still get the pity. Like they'd be like, oh, like the Indians, they were here before us, and they're like giants. They're eating our children, and we're still gonna be
Six
like,
fingers.
yeah, six fingers. They're gonna be like, oh yeah, but they had a really tough, really tough
I
time
like
in
that.
interdimensional
I
world.
like the Nephilim calling everybody else becomes colonizers. Whereas like right now it's like white people are colonizers. Everybody else gets to become white people to the Nephilim. Everybody else is colonizers. They're the original people.
Well,
and then they get to call the shots. And yeah, anything that we say against them is, I guess, racism, right? I'm pretty sure that's racism. That's some kind of, we're talking bloodlines, right?
You can't say the
you can't help
N-word.
the conditions
Can't say
of one's
Nephilim.
birth. The new N-word, dude.
And just to throw it out there too, the Nephilim were the first to invent anchor babies because technically that was their loophole of being able to sort of enjoy or have lineage that enjoys the fruits of the earth, because they were jealous, right? They were jealous of mankind, so they're like, I'm gonna make sure my kids have a better life than I do. I'm gonna go bang one of these pogs down on the ground, and then that turns into like this loophole. So now you've got this Nephilim portal baby. Shout out Joel Thomas, but the Nephilim portal
Shout out,
baby is an interdimensional anchor baby.
Yeah, I mean the Nephilim are just like Again, I don't want to. How racist can I go? This is my show. Fuck it. They're the worst races. I mean, we went from they're like basically probably Jewish, and then we just compared them to black people, and now we're saying Mexicans. I'm like, yo, dude, we got to build some kind of interdimensional wall. We got to build it real tall.
We got to build walls to block these portals, man. Oh my God. You know, we're coming off of something that's really interesting, and I think we have a chance of getting this guy on, although he is potentially facing some legal issues. But there's a gentleman named Kyle. Tom, I don't know if you saw this yet, where the guy does a undercover infiltration of the Freemasons, and he gets just an initiation level ceremony recorded, and it's very disturbing, right?
Yeah, no, I've seen it. Yeah.
Right. And so I've reached out to the guy, and he said that he'd love to come on. He's going to let me know later on in the week. Right now, he may be in some legal issues. We don't know what's going on. And so I said, keep the details to yourself. But
is it illegal? It's illegal to record like a super secret occult ceremony?
I don't know. I guess
I mean, it would be like a civil matter. It wouldn't necessarily be like a criminal matter if there was any sort of. But who knows? I mean, sometimes when you're in one of those lodge rooms, right, you might have like the treasure of the the government or whatever in there. You might have like the comptroller.
A senator.
So if you got a comptroller and you got some like they can play some games where it's like, well, technically it was in a private setting and you recorded a high-ranking government official, so now it's not this thing, now it's this thing, and pucker up.
What's super gay about these meetings is that I would figure that they'd have them in a fucking castle or something, but they're having them at like the Knights of Columbus. Like, you got to be kidding me, guys. Step up your.
Imagine getting whipped by a bunch of dudes with no shirt on in the Knights of Columbus. That is. I might consider getting whipped by a bunch of dudes with no shirt on in a castle. I'd be like, this feels a lot more high level. But just going into like an Elks Lodge and getting whipped by a bunch of old dudes.
If you got white sheetrock on the wall behind you, you're not going to be able to do an occult ceremony. I feel like that should be a rule. You've got to at least paint it like a red or something like that. These people are
or it's got to be
wild.
In the forest. It's got to be in the forest. The spirit of the Nephilim aren't going to leverage, the fabric of society in your favor if you're in an Elks Lodge. It's not happening, dude. But I guess that doesn't stop them because they got this dude. It's an initiation level ceremony. Homeboy's got his shirt on, and I do believe he's getting lightly flogged. I could be mistaken. I've only caught glimpses of it. And whenever I see things like this, I can't help but think of guys like you or like Juan Ayala, who have
shout out to Juan.
A lot of fun. Shout out to Juan, who have a lot of really fun information when it comes to all this sort of occult rituals and these various secret societies. And I'm gonna see if I can pull it up here, but there is a really awesome video, and I believe you're all both of you guys are familiar with this video, but the audience might not be. And it's of a gentleman, a black, I think he's a priest or what would you call, what's another word for a priest?
A reverend or something.
A reverend, yeah. And he is making accusations about the Bush family and their links to secret societies, i.e.
that both George W. Bush
Crossbones, rather. Sorry, guys. Skull and Crossbones of Yale, or Skull and Bones of Yale. And he goes into quite a bit of detail as to his speculation on what happens, how you become initiated. And I want to play this for you, Tom, and then I want you to
I already know about this. Yeah,
this guy is the best, by the way. I love this dude. There's a lot of videos about him. I've seen a few.
Isn't this Obama's
and I like
preacher?
Everything. Is this Obama's preacher?
Looks like. I don't think it is, but it looks like him.
Well, let's pull this back. Top, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, let's go.
Said that both George W. Bush and his father had anal sex with 100 men. How do you know that?
Because they are part of the well-known fraternal group out of Yale University known as Skull and Bones. And it's public knowledge that the Skull and Bones organization, in order to be initiated, first of all, then a part of the process, you had to stand in the circular, if you will, masturbation squad to be a part of Skull and Bones. And then you also had to be penetrated by the elder persons in Skull and Bones.
Wait, did he say masturbation squad?
That's the new show, bro.
I was saying, like, all right, we got to rebrand. We'll talk after the show, David.
That could definitely be a sub show. I'm not mad at Masturbation Squad. Now, so far, because these are bold claims from whoever this gentleman is. I wish I had his name because I greatly respect him. But these are bold claims. A masturbation squad to be laid in a casket and urinated on, and masturbated on, and I do believe he just said penetrated by the elder members of Skull and Bones at Yale. Now, does that sound reasonable to you, Tom? Not as a regular man. This doesn't sound reasonable whatsoever. But is this line up with what you have come to understand about these secret societies?
I mean, this is the elite of the elites, so you don't want to just let anyone in. You want to make sure that whoever's coming in can take at least 100 fat hogs of old dudes. Because if you got anything less than that, what do you No, so I mean, what he's describing is a hyperbole of something that's already a bit of a hyperbole, I think. But so there's something called the obscene right, and the obscene right has been described as a whole bunch of different things. The craziest version, maybe not as much as like Bush getting banged by, Papa Bush, but like one level separated from that level of craziness is that they eat a live pineal gland right there inside the tomb. That's the most extreme, and then the least
Alive?
extreme,
Like someone's head.
Fresh pineal gland. This one doesn't have as much credibility either. If you look into it, the source usually ends up being this guy named Trust Me Bro, and I haven't found any of his other work. It's all over the place. So here's a quote from the obscene right on a random internet, but like I dug into this one because this one sounded so damn interesting. And the full quote is that the obscene right takes place in a red room, and the red room is where they are torturing. What can I say on here? We can say anything we want, right?
Whatever you want.
Torturing people for a blood high is real, but the high comes from the other drugs that people partaking that are on, notably cocaine. That said, practitioners will go full schizo Satan worshiper because of the chrome, while also being high as fucking balls on the other crazy shit. That's the closest direct reference to someone describing what's going on in one of these obscene rites. Now, I don't...
Hey,
go ahead.
So adrenochrome, we joke about it a lot, but you seem like a kind of guy who would know. What does it actually do? Does it make them go schizophrenic? Like, what does adrenochrome do?
100%. So they found adrenochrome. I'll try to keep this one a little bit short because it's like this is like my favorite
let's
topic.
Find I don't know how many times we can say. I don't know if we'll get tagged for the word, but let's just.
You will.
Let's call it chrome.
Yeah. Well, I call it thrill oxide. So
I like that. That's cool.
So the thrill oxide. Originally, what happened? I'm gonna like simplify all this stuff, but I've got a documentary on YouTube. It's called Thrill Oxide that you can search and find some of this.
Definitely check that out.
So
is it really called that, or is it called what we're not saying?
No, it is. So on Rumble, it's called The Real Word that starts with an A, and on YouTube, it's called Thrill Oxide because I got a strike for just saying it too many times.
For telling their secrets.
Said like 100 times in 20 minutes. Apparently, that's pushing the limit for. So where they found it originally is, imagine you got these rich people that have been in power. They've got all the resources and money at their disposal. And everyone knows that as you get old, you die. That's kind of like a given you can't escape from. But one thing they were noticing is like, damn, my progeny, this guy that I'm about to leave all of my assets and resources to, he's acting crazy. Like, he might actually be crazy. And they also noticed that once people, and what they were describing is early onset dementia. And it usually... If it happens in the older people, still, it's like, okay, yeah, grandma got a certain age and they start kind of sunsetting and that sort of took its natural course. But when it would happen to your progeny, now it's a problem because now you don't got anyone to leave everything to. And it was such a stark difference. It was like they were normal yesterday. What's going on? Why are they starting to go crazy and talk to themselves and like hear voices and stuff? So that was where it originated, where the rich people that had the money and had the control of the science and the schools, they were like, okay, focus on this because this is one thing that we can't do anything about, and it feels like we should be able to fix that. So with all our money and power and resource, find out what's going on. So one of the things they did is they did extensive tests on dementia patients and schizophrenia patients. And just through a long, boring course of research, they discovered that schizophrenics consistently had 4 to 10 times the amount of thrill oxide in their bloodstream versus anybody else. Like it was consistent enough that you could say if you just randomly sample a room and took the people that had higher levels of thrill oxide in their blood, they would be on the closer to the end of being schizophrenic than people that had lower ends. So that's like the overall scientific official version. This is between the 1930s and the 1950s in America specifically.
Okay, conspiracy theory time. The United States government is making us all crazy with the internet. Well, the world government with the internet in order to harvest our adrenochrome. How easy would that be? You just scoop up anyone on the street and drain their blood.
And
It's
we're
like they
all
got
just
it.
redlining all the time. We're all worried about Israel and Palestine, and we're worried about the economy, and we're worried about, you know, who's racist and who's homophobic and all this crap and the debt and and we're redlining all the time. And so at any moment you could just scoop one of our bodies up and
It's so
just
much
suck on our
easier.
foreheads.
They have to run a whole pedophile ring to do this in Hawaii now, where if you could just get the whole population. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. We'll see.
I like it, dude. I like it. Well, wouldn't it make sense too? Like, all right, the reason that schizophrenics are producing more of this thrill oxide, right, is because they are going through it all the damn time. Like everything for them is dialed up to 10. They're going through a horrifying experience far more often than the average person, and so just by proxy of that experience, I would expect their adrenaline levels to be spiking
Heightened.
constantly.
Well, you get what like a feedback loop is in terms of like audio, right? It's like when you say something and a microphone picks up the thing that you said, but then it comes through the speakers and then the microphone picks that up too, and it forms this
Exactly.
infinite loop where it just and until you turn the volume down somewhere or unplug the mic, it gets so bad that your speakers will blow, right? Like it'll just keep getting worse until you fix it. So there's some aspect of that. Like if you guys are familiar with like uptake inhibitors, like MAOIs or SSRIs, what these things do is I'm oversimplifying this, is they kind of form this intentional feedback loop where normally your body produces something, like let's say it's a dopamine or serotonin. SSRI would be serotonin. Your body creates a certain amount of serotonin, it gets released, and then whatever doesn't get used is supposed to kind of like get sucked back up into your little, you know, dopamine nozzle or serotonin nozzles, and it like saves it for the next time that you need it. So it doesn't actually use everything, and all the other stuff that doesn't get sucked back in to use for the next time. Highly technical terms, by the way. That stuff, it just degrades and it dissolves, and you don't really like absorb it. It's a normal process, right? So an SSRI means that's that point when it like normally gets sucked back up and stored for later. Like instead of putting it back in the garage, it's like, hey, we got all this stuff out, let's just use it all, you know what I mean? Or like, don't put it back in the garage, keep going out there. So what happens is now you've got more serotonin in your system just in general than you normally would have. And it's not that like you're creating the serotonin, it's just that the normal serotonin that would normally be reabsorbed and stored, you're just using it all constantly.
Just partying.
So
yeah.
it's just like a nonstop party. And so if you imagine, that's kind of what schizophrenia is in a way. It's that, and adrenochrome doesn't make you crazy, but it creates this feedback loop. So first, you get into a fight or flight response, your body generates adrenaline, and you just get into that typical, you know, adrenaline state. Everyone's been in some sort of a state when they're like pumped full of adrenaline. And then as your body has to like purge that out, it's like, okay, the threat's over, we're good. I can't keep being in this state forever. I'll have a heart attack, right? And what a heart attack is in that case, it's that your body has so much adrenaline in it that your heart like doesn't know what to do, and it's almost like toxic, and it just stops your heart. You have a heart attack, you die. But what you can do is that as it degrades, if your body processes all that extra adrenaline and doesn't re-uptake it, which is what cocaine does, is basically an inhibitor that keeps adrenaline in your system. That's how cocaine works. But so as you do this, your body naturally degrades adrenaline and it turns it into a thrill oxide, and then the thrill oxide continues to degrade, and that turns into melatonin, and that turns into pigments and stuff. But what will happen is that if it doesn't degrade, or if you're producing way more adrenaline than a normal person, let's say that you produce 5 times as much adrenaline when you get into these like fight or flight responses, you're going to be jacked up for a lot longer, and you're going to have way more to process. So either A, you're going to die from it and have a heart attack, or chances are you having a heart attack from a spike of adrenaline got weeded through your genealogy like hundreds and hundreds of years ago, generously. So now what you got is someone that can process 5 times as much adrenaline as anyone else, which means they've got 5 times as much thrill oxide in their blood system as anyone else. So that kind of leads to anyone that produces more adrenaline than they need to on a constant basis 24/7, then they'll have a higher level of thrill oxide, and therefore they're probably schizophrenic. Whether or not they show all those signs, they've got like the biology to show that they'd be schizophrenic. So long story short, like, you don't need to harvest this. If anything, they might be trying to identify people that they're in competition with and take them out, because there's also a lot of benefits to being like that.
Blackmail them before they become an issue.
Or that, or just their competition in that it's
Hit 'em with the
this
heart
is
attack
this
gun.
is real subjective, right? But that people that tend to be closer to schizophrenic, they're usually like more introverted, they're more creative, they're like the artists, the poets, like all of the people that, like, you know, off themselves and like have more of those kind of issues. They're less likely to be like entrepreneurs or like mathematicians. And like, I mean, this is broad strokes here, right? Like, you don't put everyone to, but that's one of the issues. But then the other one, this is based on research by Dr. Abram Hoffer and John Smithies. They were the ones that did all this research in the 50s. But he also proposes that people that survive these huge global pandemics like the Black Plague and, you know, ... fill in the others, but that they actually have higher levels of thrill oxide, or being closer on that schizophrenic side of the spectrum, and they will actually survive these huge pandemics for the same reason that their body can process adrenaline faster, is the same reason they can kind of just survive in general faster. So that means that if you've got this propensity to be a schizophrenic or have dementia or whatever, if you don't actually get the schizophrenia or dementia, like it's a recessive or you're somehow able to avoid it,
It's
you
like
are
a coin flip on a superpower.
well, you're kind, yeah, dude. You're sort of like, yeah. You got like the star, right? You got the
Yeah, you're either
the
retarded or you're fucking.
You're not gonna
cool.
yeah, dude. You're either gonna be insane or, and this again, oversimplification. Imagine it's like a muscle, right? If being crazy is a muscle, like you want to keep breaking those fibers and keep getting yourself closer and closer to the edge of sanity, and then being like, all right, let's take a break, and then next time we'll get crazier. So to tie this back in, like, I don't think that they would need to harvest thrill oxide from a person, although the process of doing it to a live person and going through that crazy ritual and everything that would entail would push you to the brink of insanity. And it would do it in a way that you wouldn't have to be like chemically altering your body in like irrevocable ways. You could do it just in like a context. And at the end, if you also get a little dose of what we were talking about in that obscene rite, where the high is less from eating the pineal gland or drinking the thrill oxide, it's more from like the experience and the fact that everyone's already on drugs anyways, but that just adds to it. So like what they're doing is they're trying to get as crazy as they can and then bring themselves back, because that is like building this muscle that you can pass down. So by identifying other crazy people and taking them out, now there's less people that are going to survive the next big wave, because they're sort of like, you know, institutionalizing, or they're just straight up, you know, putting them in jail or whatever, but they're getting rid of the people that are getting crazy like that.
Hey man, have you looked into again, I mean, every episode, Jerry Marzinski, and his link, he thinks that schizophrenia is like literally demons talking to people. It's like outside voices coming from you being an antenna, picking up outside voices, and these outside voices are more likely to, you know, talk to people with schizophrenia. But now you're saying it's like it's a chemical thing. Like if they have this what do you call it, thrill oxide, higher levels of thrill oxide, you're more likely to have a schizophrenic mind, which is like, why would we want this thing so much unless we're channeling some kind of demons or entities beyond that want us to open up this gateway, at least in our mind, to them?
Are you familiar with Jerry? Because Jerry was a clinical psychologist for 30 years working in a schizophrenia ward.
I'd love for him.
And,
I'd love for him to sit in on that interview, because
oh man,
I feel like
it would be awesome.
yeah,
I would love to, man. That sounds awesome. I'm not familiar with his name or his work. I would love to get a more kind of clinical version of this, especially from someone on the inside.
Part of the reason that he suspects what he does is because these voices often will lead them to things that end up being true. For example, it'll be like, hey, go into this field and look for a plank of wood. And when you lift the plank of wood up, there's going to be money under there. There's going to be drugs under there. And it'll be like, you know, somebody's stash spot for a drug transfer. Or, you know, go into this person's house, go into the bathroom, lift up the back of the toilet. There's going to be cash in there. And it would be a sort of a reliable source of information that, you know, you wouldn't be able to explain that away so easily. But it's funny because I was just with Top over the weekend, and I have an aunt who's schizophrenic, And when I was younger, I heard a voice once, and for a long time I was really worried that I was going to become schizophrenic. Once I was old enough to put into context, I was like, oh shit, dude, that's not dope. And once I passed that age, because there's sort of a magic age, right? It's like 26 to 30 or something. If you can get
Exactly.
over
That's
hump.
the early onset dementia that we were talking about before.
Exactly. And so once I got past that and I wasn't hearing, I never heard a voice again or anything, I felt comfortable talking about it. But it's a weird thing. I kept like under wraps for a long time. And then I'm talking to Top's wife, who I forgot in the moment is a nurse. And I'm telling her how I get like it's funny. I'm in a house full of all these strangers, and we're talking about the craziest stuff. The most interesting thing, Top, to the rest of your family was that I go to sleep really early. That was like the most they were like,
What's
what,
early?
Dude, you go to sleep at like 8:30, 9 o'clock? I was like, yeah.
This guy's
Oh,
a
that's me
maniac.
too, man. That's me all day.
I take a nap too, typically during the day. And
What?
the way I was,
Okay, that's too
so I
much.
was explaining it to, I go to sleep early. I wake up at like 6:30. So I'm getting like, I don't know, 9.5 hours of sleep. And then I'm still taking a nap midday. And I'll get hit with such fatigue that it's unreal. So I'm just like joking about this. My wife is making fun of me for taking naps. I'm talking to Top's wife. I'm like, yeah, there's times where I can fall asleep on my feet. I even consider putting there's times it gets so bad. I'm like, what if I put cardboard on the bathroom floor of my job and took a 15-minute nap? That's where my mind goes. I've been fired before because I was driving and I couldn't risk it anymore. I was getting sucked like into sleep and I had to pull over and take a 15-minute nap. And the guy,
Incredible.
like, I was new and he thought I was just making shit up. He's like, no, you're not taking a nap. And I was like, no, dude, it was dangerous. Like I was falling asleep. He's like, no, that's bullshit. So he fired me. But she goes, yeah, have you ever been through like anything really intense? And I was like, yeah, I'm not. We were talking about, my feelings and my emotions. I was like, I'm not very well in touch with them. I used to be homeless, and you get really good at like shoving stuff down so that you don't succumb to your emotions. And she goes, yeah, I think you have an adrenal issue. I think you have like something is up with your either an overactive adrenal gland or something like that. Yeah, and I was like, oh shit! Like I remembered in that moment she was a nurse, and now I'm remembering all this other stuff about my aunt being schizophrenic and me hearing the voice. And I wonder if I made the cut, because as you're describing all this stuff, I'm like, this fucking sounds like me. Like I am a creative, but I'm not like, you're not going to catch me. I can't do the grind, the like 60-hour work week, 70-hour work weeks, like grind and get that cash and get that money. Like I can't, like the walls close in around me and I feel like it's crushing my soul. That's a very strange thing to feel, but that's what I feel. But it just reminded me of all that, because I'm like, oh shit, maybe that's just what happens from like trauma, because being homeless is traumatizing when you're a teenager. And so I think like I did some damage. It was either like, need years of therapy or crush your feelings down and move forward. And I did the crush your feelings down thing.
Like a man
so now
would
I
do.
don't.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly, dude. I don't need therapy.
Ignore
Are you
it,
kidding
bro.
me?
What
I
are you,
was
gay?
telling her, I was like, yeah. One time I was in Las Vegas and I guess I had a panic attack. I thought I was having a stroke. I never felt it before. I just knew that my hands couldn't close anymore. And I felt like I was gonna fall, even like it felt like my feet were really light and I couldn't like regulate my heartbeat. And so I decided to go to sleep. I thought I was having a heart attack, but I didn't want to tell my wife that, because if I told my wife that, dude, then she's going to get stressed out and that's going to stress me out. That's a feedback loop I don't want.
Yeah,
So I was like, the
that's
solution is I'm going to fucking sleep. And so I went to sleep like that. And I'm telling your wife this and she's like, yeah, there's something wrong. It's not good. And I was
That
like,
doesn't take a
oh,
nurse
shit,
to
dude.
come up
yeah,
with
she's
that
a nurse.
one.
I forgot about the nurse aspect. But let me pull back the rest of this video, and then I want to ask you a question after this that I really would like to know the answer to. Where the hell is my Twitter? Here it is. Boom. All right, because he says some fun stuff, and I love the phrases that he uses.
Everybody knows this as public knowledge. And George Bush Sr. and George Bush Jr. are bona fide members of Skull and Bones. That means they have been penetrated by at least 100 men in their anus area.
And how do you know that it's 100? Might it have been 95?
Well, it could have been less, but generally that's the number that kind of gets the attention of everybody.
And if it could have been fewer, it could have been none also, right?
No, it could not have been none. It could not have been none, no. And because Skull and Bones will not accept you without that practice. It's hideous, but that's what they do. That's what these fraternities do. Some do even worse than that. But yes, George Bush has been penetrated by other men and has also been doused in semen of other men while he lie in a casket. Other men have masturbated in his face.
Sounds like quite an evening. Hey,
Man, first off, that motherfucker, every time I watch it, I'm more and more impressed with the white guy. He is a professional. Where is this guy?
Dude.
I want him on the show.
Unbelievable. Doused in semen. Other men have masturbated in his face. I
Could it
love
be
that shit, dude.
95?
That is incredible. Incredible. So
He was negotiating hardball. He was like, well, if it's less than 95, it could be 0. And it's like, he's like, no,
it is not 0.
No way.
No, it could not have been 0.
Well, like when he asked him the source, he's like, "Well, that's just the number that most people agree on." And it's like, okay, I guess that's
Most
That's the number
doctors-
that gets people's attention.
nine out of 10.
9 out of 10 doctors say at least 100 men.
So on that, what he was talking about again, like it was obvious. He even kind of admitted it was hyperbole when he said, "Okay, maybe it wasn't 100. Maybe it was like it had to be between 1 and 100." So, and I mentioned the obscene right where they eat the pineal gland, all this stuff. But the most tame version, I think, come from Anthony Sutton's book called "Fleshing Out Skull and Bones" by Trine Day Publishing. But he kind of states in there that this rituals that you get into a coffin and you basically masturbate, and as you're doing this, you recount all of your like sexual escapades throughout, you know, your life that you can remember, and they write it all down in like a book. And then they take this book or a scroll or whatever the hell they write it on, and they kind of like put it into the archive, right? So it's very reminiscent of like the Bavarian Illuminati, because what they would do is have you kind of give them all the dirt and all the details on yourself. Have you ever seen the Nexium cult? They did something similar where they'd have you like record you saying something real messed up to all the people that care about you. So it's like, if you ever leave, we'll play you this video to your Nana that's like, you know, you jerking off and saying, "Fuck you, Nana." So that's what they have on them. So really the Bavarian Illuminati had something very similar to that, where they had like a whole black book that you voluntarily gave them in exchange to be a member. And you could say that this kind of migrated and morphed into the Skull and Bones, where now the Skull and Bones, in my mind, it's probably realistically something similar. It's like, what's every horrible thing you've ever done? So now we've got a record and some dirt on you. If they jerk off or not, I don't know. It's college, you know. If they've had some beers, like who hasn't jerked off with other college buddies? That's not gay. It's just like part of the college experience, bro. Don't. Well, yeah. Maybe you haven't gone through it then, but or anyone that's gone through the military, like you've been in a room full of naked dudes, which is the gayest thing that could ever happen, right?
99. Oh, shout out to Cheney, Project Cheney. What's going on? Yeah. So I think that brings me into my next question. I want to know some of the, and we can go into hyperbole, right? We can go to the more extreme versions because that's fun, dude. What are some of the things that you've come to understand as the more egregious, barriers to entry into these secret societies, right? If Skull and Crossbones on the high end, you have to get penetrated by 100 men. On the low end, it's certainly not 0. It couldn't be 0. Right. What other secret societies have a bar for entry that is very disturbing?
I have a question. Now, this is like, you might know. What does the anus have to do with thrill oxide? Because it seems like they're going through this route constantly, especially with children. So what do you have any insight into there?
I don't think anything. And to be honest, from what my understanding is that you could get the same quality thrill oxide from a cow as you could from a person, and none of it involves torture or anything like that. All you got to do is extract the adrenal gland, and that has all the components you would need, all the precursors that would create adrenaline. So essentially, first you create adrenaline, and then you create thrill oxide out of it. Anyone that's got an EpiPen, they probably have like special chemicals and stuff, but the old school EpiPens that they were bringing back from World War One, they were starting to go bad, and it would go from a clear liquid into like a milky or a pink liquid. And the original name for thrill oxide was pink adrenaline, because that's literally what it was. They had all these stocks of adrenaline, epinephrine, the other name for it, and that just from sitting around too much in the back of, you know, a tank or whatever the hell they were storing it in, it would degrade. And that's exactly what happens. Adrenaline degrades and turns into thrill oxide. So people would be, you know, need an EpiPen, and they'd shoot themselves up with what they thought was adrenaline. They'd get some of that adrenaline, but then they'd start tripping out and hallucinating. And that's actually where they first started connecting these dots. So a lot of the source for that original epinephrine that turned into the pink adrenaline, I mean, I don't think that that came from human subjects. They just got that stuff from cows and horses and whatever other sort of byproducts from the farming industry, because that's what makes adrenaline and thrill oxide so unique, is that there's not any other real chemicals that have a universal effect on all other animals that can also be extracted from mammals. There's the butofen or whatever it's called that comes from the frogs that people do like the darts, or they lick the frog and they trip out. And then there's like toxoplasmosis where you like lick a cat's butt or whatever, right? But all of those have a way different impact, because what's happening with adrenaline and thrill oxide is that's the actual chemical that's meant to do the thing that you're doing. So I can take it from me and give it to a cat, or I can take a hippopotamus and extract it from that and put it in my body, and it all is this like universal substance. So I don't want to party poop. Yeah, so I don't think that torturing a kid.
You're not party pooping.
Well, somebody should tell the elites this then.
Well, that's what I'm saying though. Like the it's like it's not the destination, it's the journey, right? So sometimes it makes it more fun.
If this is indeed linked with schizophrenia, and schizophrenia is linked with like speaking with demons, then this kind of does follow. Like all this butt stuff and all like the torture that you're doing is literally just insane, because you can get it by other means much easily. Instead, you've created like this global blackmail ring to do something that you could have gotten from a cow. It's insane.
Well, there's another aspect to that too. So on the whole, like, let's say it's demons that are latching themselves on to schizophrenia. So there's the naturalistic version where it's all chemicals, and then the supernatural version where it's all demons. It might be somewhere in between those two. There's this concept from, I think, Rosicrucianism, which just summarizes it from other sources, but that ghosts aren't maybe necessarily like unfinished business, but like one example is that you get so attached to your material form that you have like a sex addiction, or you become an alcoholic or a drug addiction. When you die and it's time to pass on, it's not like you've got unresolved business and you need to go haunt somewhere. It's like you're so addicted to alcohol that you can't actually leave the physical realm, because leaving the physical realm means you don't ever get to have a sip of alcohol again, which sounds silly, because it's like if you just leave the physical realm, you're just like in the best mood all the time, every time, right? But if you're so addicted to it, what'll happen is that addiction kind of becomes like this anchor. So like instead of you oversimplifying it, instead of you going to the light and going behind the gate and chilling with all the homies, like you go to a bar and your ghost soul latches on to another dude that's drinking, and now he becomes even more addicted because now you're the monkey on his back. And then when he dies, you guys latch on to somebody else. So, and just take any of your vices that have to do with remaining in the material physical realm. So if that's your thing, now like it's not just extracting this thing and taking it. Now it's like, what if a demon wanted to experience other things in the physical realm they couldn't in the spiritual or like this metaphorical realm? So maybe they just really like murdering children. Maybe they just really like, doing these things, so they have to use us to do it.
I like the idea that these some of these ghosts are just meth heads that just can't let go of meth. That's incredible.
100%.
But what you were saying earlier about we're speculating as to the correlation between schizophrenia, an overactive adrenal gland, and demons, right? It's the way I see it. You kind of alluded to it there for a moment, where you said maybe it's a mixture of both. But it's like if the brain really is a receiver of frequency, and these entities are reduced from, instead of a physical form, strictly energetic form, and your brain has the capabilities of receiving them, but only under the right conditions. And maybe these chemicals alter the receiver in some way, where then it's more susceptible to taking in things like that. So maybe it is a feedback loop, right? Where it's like maybe if there is trauma, because I would expect that there is I can't say this definitively, but it sounds reasonable to suggest that there's a link between childhood trauma and future schizophrenia. That doesn't seem like much of a leap, right? Maybe that trauma douses your brain in douses, like I understand where it's coming from. It's just pours over your brain a bunch of adrenaline, and this changes the nature of the receiver. And now not only did you have a traumatic experience, but the chemical reaction in your brain has now changed the receiver in such a way that you are receptive to these frequencies, these entities that are otherwise just energy and frequency. And now it is a feedback loop because now they're interacting with you because of the trauma, causing more trauma, causing more adrenaline, causing you to be more receptive to them in their messages or whatever until, you have some horrifying case. My aunt is beyond the pale in a lot of ways. She is full-blown schizophrenic, multiple personalities, and I've said it before, I think, on the show, but she's been arrested for climbing the George Washington Bridge. She's been arrested for stopping an NJ Transit train. She was on the news for that. She's been in and out of institutions and halfway houses all around New York City, basically. We were from New Jersey, and so she was in the hood of New Jersey, in Elizabeth, which is just a terrible place to live, and then on the streets of New York. But she has told me things when she was okay, when she was on meds that, calmed her down and made her pretty normal for a while. Of course, it's always when they neglect the meds that all of this shit comes rushing back, but I think that's probably a double-edged sword, right? Because I remember the way she would describe it was like everything was on mute, like her whole life was on mute. Everything was just kind of smothered. And so she wasn't a fan of them, and they would bring her some peace. She'd be able to interact with her family for some time, but I imagine that whatever that experience is life, it's still not worth not hearing voices because of what it does to your quality of life. But she would tell me things like she would smell the devil. This is one that I've talked about pretty often. A horrifying story. She was really sort of open about sharing this with me. But one of the things she said that stuck with me was that the devil had a particular smell. And I don't know if you've ever come across this notion, being into occult research and things of that nature, but she said that the devil smelled like sulfur and rotting flesh. And throughout my research, I find that a lot of people who have run-ins with either cryptids, aliens, alien encounters, spirits, whether it's some sort of demonic entity, they will describe a smell associated with it. And it's very rare. So they won't always describe a smell associated with these encounters, but when they do, it's putrid, sulfuric. And I've even heard stories where people claim to have been in the presence of portals opening. And that's one of the things they smelled was a putrid, rotten, sulfuric smell. And so I can't help but wonder, and that brings us back to Jerry Marzinski. We've been talking a lot about him lately, but we are gearing up to have him on soon. And so we'll be able to put that to bed. But right now it's like this, this thing in our brain where me and Top just keep going back and forth about it because it's incredibly interesting.
I mean, do you want to get into what happened over the weekend? What we saw?
Oh, yeah. I'm actually talking to the person that showed us that to get them to send me the recording. And they've agreed to do that. They just haven't gotten around to it yet. But essentially what happened, Tom, over the weekend was that we were hanging out with some friends, and one of them confided in us. Unfortunately, somebody close to them had passed away of a fentanyl overdose. And the roommate of the person who passed away was aware that they were going through it. They locked themselves in a room, and they didn't quite know that they were overdosing. I guess they knew that they were high, and they knew that they were alone in that room. And they started to hear what sounded like several different voices, not in any discernible language, but several voices coming from the room. And it was horrifying. It's very much like The Exorcist. I mean, that's the nature, a lot of growling, and schizophrenics will do this too. And people who are really high on a lot of shit will do this too. People who are, on fentanyl, I suppose.
Like listening to it there, it was definitely more than one voice overlapping in two different pitches. One is like a guttural growl, and the other one is like you can hear a guy at the same time like whimpering. And there's one person in that room.
And
there's people that can do that. It's called dual throating, I think.
Well,
but did they die right after?
No, you don't die right after. But I mean, if you're channeling something that could give you a skill that any human could do, only if you knew how to, you know what I mean? Like it could just be a thing that people do as they get channeled too.
Well, I said two voices, but David said he heard three, and the other person said that there was like 3 or 4. But I'm just being like super conservative. I'm like, more than one.
This is like a JFK assassination. Like, oh, there was
how
3
many
shots.
shooters?
Oh, there's 4 shots.
Well, so I thought that I heard 3. The whimpering guy, which I thought I identified as him suffering. This is, obviously heavy speculation, right? There's no way to know this for certain. But what I identified as him suffering, there was a almost an animalistic growl. And then there was a voice that sounded just like the little girl from The Exorcist. Like, they're fucking your mother's pussy in hell, or whatever the hell she says. It was that kind of a voice. And at one point, for only we're talking 5 seconds worth, there are 2 voices happening simultaneously over one another. And so, like you said, that this could be a phenomenon that happens when people are channeling and things like that. But it was, I felt bad it was happening at Top's house. That's how I was like, I feel bad that we're listening to this we had to go outside on his porch. And even then I was like, it was dark out and shit. And I was like, this feels fucked up. I feel like we shouldn't be listening to this here, but I was stoked. I really wanted to hear it. And then unfortunately, the guy, he has enough. He doesn't want to record anymore. It's so terrifying to him because he's hearing this as well. And you can imagine it's probably significantly higher audio quality in person.
There's like shit.
So
there's shit falling in the room. It's something, it's like a struggle going on in the room, and the dude's just recording from the other side of the door.
And so he decides to hightail it out of there because it gets too heavy for him. He calls him up. One thing leads to another. They arrive and they find him dead in the bathroom. So he ends up overdosing. And this is the last, noises that he made. And so it gets us back and forth to this idea of drug use, schizophrenia, channeling entities, dual throating. Yeah, that's that
that was a rough paraphrase of that. I'll have to find the real word, but dual throating's cooler to say. That's what all the kids are saying.
I like that one, but there, to me, it seems like we have a very where the medical industry is too prideful, maybe, to admit that they don't have a good handle on what schizophrenia is. Schizophrenia is a sort of a scatter shot of, it's like birdshot. It hits all kinds of different things. And they're all categorized as the same thing. And then they just sort of drug these people into oblivion because at least if we don't understand it, we can subdue them and make them less of a danger, I suppose, to other people. But like our understanding of it is horrible.
Well, before you even get into the schizophrenia, they used to call it dementia praecox. And dementia praecox, it was like if you had any mental issue at all, then you were schizophrenic, or you had this dementia praecox thing, and it was only over time. And they would also throw criminals in here. They would just say, if you've got a propensity to do crime, then you're clearly insane. You clearly have something wrong with your brain. So you're going to the same place as this dude that's talking to people all the time. You might be in different wings, but you're in the same sort of facility. And they would do the same thing for kids that wouldn't pay attention in class, or that had what you would, I guess, call now is ADHD. What they would do to those kids back in the day, where Ritalin and all of these other drugs came from, is they would just give them meth, and it was straight up just meth. And the kids would actually do better on a little bit of meth, right? They also did some alcohol studies where they would send kids to do things drunk, and they would follow kids that were criminally minded and see what they would kind of get up to. And that was all being grouped into the same thing as if you had sort of schizophrenia or dementia, a number of these different ailments. And then you mentioned that your aunt also showed multiple personality disorder, which is MPD or dissociative identity disorder, DID. There's a million different names for it now. People keep getting offended and they change it.
People overlap schizophrenia with that multiple personality disorder, kind of like what's that called? When someone has Tourette's, they think that they just curse out loud, but that's actually something else. Right. That's associated with it. That's very rare to be associated with it, but it's
the fun version of it, though. And
when I was a kid, I thought it was the same thing. I thought schizophrenia and multiple personality disorder were the same thing. I didn't. It took me a long time to realize you can be. So when I was hearing oh, so and so is schizophrenic, I'm thinking my aunt. It's not the same thing though. And then bipolar gets wrapped up in there as well, and
manic depressive gets wrapped up in that, because a lot of those are a lot of what you're describing, your aunt, for example, she circled in D that was all of the above, right? So the bipolar and manic depression I'm not a doctor, and this is all like very oversimplified. But bipolar and manic depression are, I think, very similar, except on like a time scale. So bipolar means from moment to moment, I could be like this. Like I could be in good mood, bad mood, good mood, bad mood. You know, happy, sad, and like at the flick of a wrist, essentially. If you do like manic depressive, it's sort of the same, but stretch that timeline out. It's not moment to moment. It's almost like day to day or event to event. So when you're manic, it's like, I'm gonna write a book, I'm gonna shoot a movie, I'm gonna paint a mural, like I'm gonna start 100 projects, and then like a week or a month later, it's just like, man, I'm no good. Like I suck. I'm not gonna call anyone back. Why does anyone even want to talk to me? And if you consistently go through those ups and downs on like a moment to moment, you might be bipolar, but you probably know that by now, or other people probably know that. If you're manic depressive, some people are like, oh, it's just that time of the year when I get, sad or when I get happy. But if it's consistent enough that there's like, you could draw like a pattern, then that might imply like mania. So then you were saying that your aunt almost like goes through these modes, but when she's on her meds, that everything's like muted. So if you look at like an audio signal, right? If you get like a raw, uncompressed audio signal, that's kind of what the waveform looks like. It's all over the place. It gets really high, it gets really low. But then when you want to like present it, you will do some compression. So usually you'll squish it down. So instead of the highs and lows, like everything will be reduced a little bit, and then you can raise the, like, I'm not going to get into like the audio thing, but the actual compression aspect, before you add gain back to it, it's actually reducing the lows, like the lowest lows and the highest highs, to bring in sort of a more average bandwidth between everything. That's kind of what you're describing. So like the manic depressives, like being manic might actually feel great because it's like, I can do 500 projects. I'm Superman. Let's do this, Like it's not realistic, but it feels great to do that. And then when you get on the other side, like it probably sucks to be on the very far depressed side, but as you come back up, that incredible dopamine release. So now imagine you don't get that fun mania and you don't get that fun dopamine release. You just kind of stay in this plateau all the time. That's that mute button that she's kind of describing.
You're describing Hitler, man, because he's like, yo, we're gonna fucking take over Europe. We're gonna wear fucking Dior. We're gonna be flying.
And then he's like, oh, this sucks. I'm gonna kill myself.
Yeah, he's like, he crashes and he's like, you know what? Stop feeding these Jews. Like, bring them out to the field. It's like, damn, man, you were doing so good. What happened?
You could have just given him some Zoloft, and it might have been all good.
Avoid this whole thing.
I'm not gonna lie though. I'm fucking sitting over here. You're describing this. You're describing me. Like I thought that everybody had big. Like I have cycles that I go through yearly. I found recently that they are like, instead of contracting, they're expanding. So it's like where it used to be a really tight, predictable wave. Like I know I'm going to be like this for part of the year and like this for the other part of the year. It was like a 4 to 6 month cycle or something like that. Now it's stretching out and becoming much more consistent. You know what keeps it away? This. Like if I don't create, if I'm not making a show, my self-worth plummets. Even if I have like a good job and I'm doing good, if I'm not creating and I'm not like putting out content, that's why I've been doing like Top Nose. I've been doing content for like 6-7 years. It's what I found that quiets it. And if I don't do something like that, it's like I just have my brain does a really good, I think it's a good thing. It feels like a good thing. Of like connecting dots and all this other shit. My mom used to worry that I was going to be paranoid. I used to have, well, I guess I still do have ADHD. They put me on Adderall when I was a kid, but I experienced the mute and also the thickening. Like your boy got fucking, oh no, it was the opposite. I was fat as shit. And then I took Adderall, dropped all the weight. But I became like essentially depressed. And I became, I had to go to Scared Straight. So the Scared
Get the
Straight
fuck out of here.
because
We gotta find that video.
Like you say, I had to. Like,
I did have to. So what happened was when they put me on Adderall, I became incredibly irritable, and I got into a lot of fights. It was like the summer of 8th grade, going into high school. I wasn't going to go to high school because I had been in 13 fights in 8th grade. And the reason is because I was on Adderall and I was incredibly irritable. And if anybody did anything to me, it was on. And I ended up going to like Rahway State Prison, which was, New Jersey State Prison. And it was the only way that I was going to pass the thing. And man, this would have been 2003. Yeah, 2003. And they were definitely like hitting you. This is before it was a show. like on the show, they didn't hit these kids. When we went, they hit us. Like they fucked us
Well,
up.
they had a show in like the 90s too.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
yeah,
bet you
yeah.
they hit him on that one. I bet you back in the
I
day
think it was
you
an
could find,
MTV
like,
show, if I'm not mistaken.
well, it's good entertainment, dude. Like it's
It
one
was
of my
on Jerry
favorite.
Springer.
Dude,
It
there was
on Jerry
one where
Springer.
it's just this big guy comes out and just like, hold my pocket, and that's the whole show. Is he's got this little kid like holding his pocket and like walking around. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know what I can say on here.
Did you
I'm
have
gonna
100
say-
guys jizz in your face?
No, they put me in a
95.
coffin. They pissed on me.
Sorry, 95. Yeah.
I'm gonna say Saget. So Bob Saget. So they would pull their pocket inside out, and they'd make like the one dude, one big fat kid hold his pocket because he was laughing. He thought it was funny, and he's like, "Hold my pocket, you fat Saget ass cracker." But Saget means something different. And the kid would be like, "Okay," and he'd hold his pocket, and then the guy would start pacing back and forth and telling a story. When I was in the streets, I was in the park. I saw an old lady. Her purse was out. I decided I was gonna rob that bitch. And then he would stop walking, and the kid would let go of the pocket, and he'd turn around and slap him in front of everybody. Go, "I told you to hold my pocket, you fat Saget ass cracker." Like it was the best shit. It was a bonding experience.
But you better
They
not
hit me-
laugh, dude, because then you're holding
Dude.
the pocket.
I didn't laugh at. I was such a bitch. They hit me one time because I didn't. They said they put us all in line. Right? I was 13, bro. They put us in line and they said, "Get dick to ass to the dude in front of you." Like
Yeah.
that's how they want you to be. Like you got to
Not
press
to
up
butt,
against him.
yeah.
Yeah, and the dude in front of me was a big. I'll never forget Shane Honoré, big black dude, fat ass, right? And it was like on my chest because this was like everybody was going through growth spurts. Mine never hit, so his ass was just on my chest, and all I did was like back up and look at it, precariously or whatever. And fucking this dude like yanked me out of line, and all I remember is him saying, "I said dick to ass," and he went blow and hit me one time, and it was I was like sobbing. And he shoved me back against the wall. And then for the rest
I'll do
of the
my
shit,
homework now.
attached. The rest of the time, I was attached to that dude. It didn't work, though. I went to fucking jail after that and all kinds of shit. If anything, I think it makes you, it gives you like this story. You go back to school and you have like I was in fucking prison, and then everybody thinks it's cool. And so it just only gets worse. It did not work at all. But yeah, so it's just funny because I feel like I'm learning a lot about myself and my family through this podcast because that's very much me. Like I have these nothing in life for me is consistent. And I think like, oh, it's just my it's my cycles. Like, yeah, I'm 33 years old. I just know that about myself. Like but I thought that was everybody. I thought like everybody just kind of went through.
Well, I think it is everyone because no one is just like the same flat line their whole lives. But some people have way higher highs and way lower lows than other people, and then some people can predict it better than others. Like if you've actually got the advantage, even if the highs and the lows are crazy, if you can somehow predict it and be like, oh, I feel like this might be around the time of year that I'm gonna get into my manic phase or to my depressive phase. You might not be able to like stop that phase from happening, but you could be like, let's not start 100 projects. Like maybe it's just that thing that happens, and let's just start like 1 or 2 projects and keep. And the same thing on like the depressive part. You just remind yourself too, like, okay, this has never in my entire life has never lasted forever. I always come out of this, so there's no reason to think that this won't also be something that I come out of. So just knowing your own patterns and knowing that can help you out. But like, I don't know if any, like if you read some of Albert Hoffman's stuff, he would say that some people had like weird chemical deficiencies where if they ate an apple, they would start tripping and turn into a schizophrenic immediately because of the folic acid and a whole bunch of other, different variations. That there are some people on this planet that are just constantly tripping, but all it would take is take like a little niacin every day and then bam, the problem goes away immediately.
Yeah, this is like the route that my wife has been exploring. Because she still is a registered nurse in Western medicine, but the idea of supplementation, and not just supplementation, but like finding what you're actually deficient in, and she's gone down that route, even to like the extreme of like she went gluten-free for a long time, and it does free your mind, like whether it be the bacteria in our gut or the chemicals in whatever kind of bullshit process goy slap that they're feeding us, this does affect us all the time. Because I feel the same way. Sometimes I'll wake up and I'll be like, but I'm more cognizant of it now. Before, I guess I would get like frustrated or like be confused. Now I wake up and I say, oh shit, like I feel like I'm going through a funk. but I'm aware. You know, I don't know why. Nothing really happened, but I'm aware of it. And if you're aware of it, then you can be like, okay, well, you know, things are just going to be a little bit more down. Don't feel like everything around you is crashing. Get through it, and then you're back running. And guess what? You get through it, and I'm back fucking running again the next couple days or however long it is. It's not like for me, it's not seasonal. For me, it's like random. So I guess I am manic depressive too. I'm learning about myself. Thank you very much.
This might not be the best analogy, but it's like, here's the difference between like crazy and sane, I guess. Again, bad analogy, but let's say you shit your pants in your car or something, right? Like you go to let out a fart and it's a little bit more than you ordered. And you get out and you start walking around and just going through your normal daily life. If you were like completely oblivious to this and other people are noticing it and they're laughing and they're pointing and stuff, and you still just like keep on living your life and
That's crazy.
don't even at least acknowledge it, you're kind of crazy, right? If you get out of the car and you're like, okay, I still shit my pants, but I know that I shit my pants, and you kind of shimmy around, and people see that you're acting like you know.
You try to
that
get to the pants store,
Right,
you know, like
right,
you're looking
right.
for the That's
so-
normal.
But and it's
That's
normal
usually
at a
good.
level that your brain. It's not just like logic. Like your brain is seeing like that dude is acting like he doesn't know that he shit his pants when it's clearly out. Like I can smell it, I can see it. How does he not feel it? So again, silly analogy here, but it's kind of the same thing. Where if like you wake up and you shit the bed or you shit your pants, like you can be like, okay, this is a day that I shit my pants. Let me just live accordingly. Maybe I'll go take a shower and change or whatever. But if you get out and you don't even realize it and you go and live your day, now it just like it turns into a horrible feedback loop because now people are going to treat you differently because they're like, this guy is fucking insane.
This is
you know?
a
He doesn't
great
even realize
analogy.
This.
This is I don't know if you know this, fantastic analogy, because it is like that. Like you're smelling like shit, and other people will tell. Like my wife would tell me, she'd be like, "What's wrong with you?" You know, and I'll just tell like, I'm just feeling like down, but I'm gonna, you know, and I even let her know because she'll pick up on it. But it's like, yeah, if I shit my pants, she'd be like, "You smell like shit." Like what's going
What are you
on? And I'm like,
doing?
"What do you mean?"
What are you fucking doing?
Or, I mean,
Yeah,
you could also just be like, she'd be like, oh, you're smelling like extra pungent today. You'd be like, yeah, I know, I stink. I haven't showered for a couple of days. It's like, oh, you know, you're nasty, dirty. But if you're like, what are you talking about? It smells great. Like I haven't showered in weeks, but there's no reason that I should. Like now it's like, oh, you're
It's
starting
just
to
shit.
go
It's
crazy.
natural. It's
Yeah.
a
Now you're
natural smell.
yeah. Well, now you're starting to go crazy.
Well,
Yeah.
You know, to tie these two things together, shitting your pants and what Top was saying about, you know, goy food and what they're feeding us and how, you know, you can really remedy a lot of this shit. And then we'll hop off this afterwards because I do have a question that I think is really interesting for Tom. But for a while, I realized I couldn't eat carbs. Like simple carbs would make me crash like unbelievably hard. And so I started doing the meat only thing, and I wanted to do a challenge, and I did meat only for a month and I pulled it off. But it wasn't without having to shit on the floor in public a couple of times. And one time in particular, I was with my son and I went to my buddy's house and he said, "Hey, I'm not there yet. I'll be there in like 20 minutes." And I said, "It's fine." We lived in a nice apartment complex. I figured we'd walk around and it's a lot of trees and kind of it was just a pretty place. So me and my son are walking through this apartment complex, taking in the view, and all of a sudden it hits me. And when it hits me, it would hit me like lightning, dude. And so I have to like suddenly I'm squeezing his hand. He's like, why are you squeezing my hand? And I'm like, I'm sorry, I have to release his hand and like shake my hands out. And I'm like, you know, just manically running around this apartment complex looking for some place to publicly shit. Yeah, like to publicly shit, dude. And my son's like, "Where are we going?" And I'm like, "Don't worry about it." And I'm going like I'm gritting my teeth. They're about to shatter. And I can see in the distance there's a construction dumpster. And so I start waddling over there real quick and he's like, "Where are we going?" You know, he's old enough to be frustrated at least. And I'm like, "Don't worry about it. Just come with me." We get there. What's nice is we find several $20 bills on the way there. We found about $80
What?
to this shit. So this is a weird story. I know, dude. We found about $80 up to go shit behind this dumpster. And as we get there, my kid doesn't know what's going on. I'm just like, "Look, $20. Look, $20. Look, $20." We scoop it all up. He's like, "This is amazing." We finally get there, and I'm like, "Turn around." And he's like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Turn around." And he fucking
And
turns
give me the
around.
$20. I gotta wipe my ass.
And I just drop my pants and just spray shit into a puddle. And then to move on to when I was functioning at my highest, probably last summer, a diet of meat, mostly beef, raw organic honey, dairy, but like raw milk, a lot of Greek yogurt, organic Greek yogurt, sweet potatoes, and a lot of fruit. Not only was I in fantastic shape and not shitting my pants, but I was functioning at an incredibly high level intellectually. Like I was goal oriented, able to smash through I was in the backyard in the sunlight in Florida doing kettlebell swings like as a daily routine and also eating like a champion and taking care of all. I mean, I had a list of things that I wanted to get done. Like, I'm going to move my life from New Jersey to Florida, and I'm going to crush all these goals. A week after I arrived, I started a high paying job. A month and a half after I arrived, I closed on my first house. Like, every massive thing that I wanted to do, I was ticking it off the list. And then I've noticed since then, like my diet is suffered. I think it's because I do the show and it kind of threw me into chaos. I didn't know where everything was going. So I put everything else on the back burner and I'm like, let's get this podcast rolling. And then once I enter some routine, I can go back to those things. But I've noticed that my brain doesn't function the same way. And shout out to JC in the chat who said B12 deficiency. I take 2 B12 things a day. I don't experience that crash necessarily anymore where I'm about to fall asleep on my feet at work. It's yeah, there you go. Boom. I'm serious. I think there's like really something to the B12. A lot of vitamins I think are kind of shit, honestly. But B12 seems to be something that is actually really important. So I take 2 B12s every morning so that I don't nearly fall asleep on my feet predictably at 12:30 to about 2 o'clock. It's a nightmare, and I'm gonna sleep on the bathroom floor of a shop. But to get off all that crazy shit, I wanted to ask you, Paranoid, because one, I want to know how it is that you got into all of this. Like you are, for folks who don't know, you have your hands in some of the coolest shit. Like sometimes I feel like there's an inner child in me who wants all these different things, right? I want like occult action figures. I want
Hell yeah.
conspiracy theory comic books. You are doing all of this. Like every once in a while, you'll show me something that you're working on. I know you just did the Chaos Twins with Sam Tripoli, where it's a comic book series that is about to be released. The first issue is going to come out, I believe it's January. And it's about his kids, and they're fighting essentially cryptids and different like occult conspiracy things and reptilians and all that.
That Kickstarter is kicking ass, man. You guys are on fire.
It's nuts,
crushing.
dude. It's been blowing up. Yeah, this is.
It's so
I'm hoping
cool
this
to
is
watch.
like the turn into getting into more mainstream and getting stuff in shops.
I
Hell
think
yeah.
so, and I can see it. It's like it's all coming over this hill right now. And every time you talk to me, you show me something unbelievably awesome that you're working on. And for you to be so immersed in this, and not only that, incredibly knowledgeable, you've done your homework for a long time, and it shows not only in your rhetoric but also in your products. Like your products are accurate as far as the content. And so I'd like to know. Let's first start with like how the hell, dude? Like what set you on this path? Like what was the first fucking thing that you were like? Because it's all snowballed into the most insane shit ever.
I mean, I joke around. There might be some truth to this, but it's like all like everyone with kids listening, close the ears. But you find out Santa Claus isn't real, and you're like, wait, my parents were in on this shit? Wait, my grandparents were in on this shit? My teacher? Like, everybody in my life that's an authority figure was in on this. And in, retrospect, it's for, like, good reasons, but I think that kind of mentality just throws you into a spin. And the next big one was, like, DARE. I remember 5th grade, and we went through the DARE program, and they had all the, like, if you do this drug, you'll start murdering people, and you'll be a rapist, and you're just like if you smoke weed, you turn to a criminal, and you're in jail within a week, essentially. And, like, all of the different lies that you learn as a kid, right? And I think that at a certain age, like, all of those lies just all kind of, like, got disproved at once. And then I was just like, I don't believe anybody about anything anymore, period. I don't believe books. I don't believe TV. I don't believe my parents. I don't believe my teachers. None of it. And it was also at an age where one of my friends had, like, the internet. And, man, in the early days of the internet, if you just went, like, randomly browsing, you would find some weird niche, theories out there. So I found out Bavarian Illuminati, and I found out about Skull and Bones and all this stuff as, like, I don't know, 12 or 13 surfing the internet. And there was even that card game. Remember is it Steve Jackson? The Illuminati card game that's supposed to be like all prophetic and all these. Like I got the whole set. I had the set when I was like 12 or 13. So I don't know what it was about the mid 90s was just like perfect for anyone that wanted to get into conspiracy culture. Before it was all like modern, like I'm a hipster conspiracy theorist. Before it was like got left wing with the Occupy movement, and then before it turned right wing with, Sandy and Trump and everything. Before that, it was like nonpartisan. It was just for weirdos and paranoids, and like both sides of the political spectrum looked down on conspiracy theorists. But now it's a little different. Now it's been like co-opted.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, I remember dabbling in that time frame, but never going as deep as maybe that you have. And I sort of wish that I did, because there's a lot of stuff on the internet. Like, right now we'll be like, I got to go to Google, DuckDuckGo to search for Illuminati secrets. You're never going to find anything. Before, it's like, go to this website, and that website will tell you to go to another website, and then you'll fucking talk to some dude in the chat room. He's like, no, go to this website.
Yeah, dude.
And nothing is like, I've gone that far, but yeah, now
I
Google
feel like
kind of.
No, I didn't do this with Bitcoin. I wish I did, but I feel like if conspiracy theories were Bitcoin, like I got in at the ground floor, because I got stacks of books behind me that I just remember buying on a whim because it was like, I don't know, $8 or $10 for some random book. And now I go and find it on it. Yeah, dude, I go on Amazon. It's like $600 for this thing. Like, it's not that good of a book, but they're so rare. And I think it really was like before conspiracy theories got co-opted by like mainstream, essentially. Like, no one cared about. I literally was in the early 2000s. Every day, I would just make it part of my routine. Go to eBay and search for a Bohemian Club and search for a Bohemian Grove. And then I would search for individual camp names, like Mandalay. Camp Mandalay is like one of the highest ones in there. And as an example, there'd be people that like their grandpa would die, and they'd have an estate sale, and the stuff that was left over they'd put on eBay, and they didn't realize that Bohemian Club or Bohemian Grove stuff was worth anything, because it really wasn't worth anything. So they would just list it as like Camp Mandalay yearbook, or whatever, Hillbillies Club yearbook, and didn't even put Bohemian in the title. So like I'd be scooping this stuff up for pennies on the dollar now in retrospect, right? But now you try and find this, and somebody like prints out like a 3D printing of an owl that has nothing to do with Bohemian Grove, and they'll be like Secret Society, Bohemian Grove, rare artifact, like all those buzzwords. So now you can't just like come across it by chance and get like a good deal. Now everyone's just saying that anything that has an owl on it's Bohemian Grove. But there was like this time before everyone was jumping on that with all the buzzwords. And like, I mean, I've got a sick collection of shit. So
this is why I stay near the villages, man. Got to go to those estate sales. There's a lot of them popping up over here, man. Who knows who was into
it? So where you said the villages? Where you at, man?
Near the villages, yeah, like right around there. Like,
what's the exact address? No,
I'll tell you. Let me tell you. Hold on, let me type it out with my social too.
No, I'm in Orlando, so I mean, the villages isn't that far away from me.
You gotta hang out, man. You gotta come up.
We're down, man.
Oh yeah, for sure. Next time we get together, we got to bring him out there, and then we got to see where Juan is, because I know Juan's real south. He's like He's like kind of in the swamplands down there.
Yeah. We won't expose him, and plus, fuck that guy.
Yeah.
Shout out Juan.
You guys ever go to?
Take back the shout out.
Oh, what is it called? Gun? Damn, I haven't been there in a while. Ever since the flu came over. But there's a really huge like Walmart shooting range that I still got. Like Gun World. Yeah. I mean.
I haven't been.
That's my favorite spot, dude. That's where when Juan's comic first got printed up, I was like, he was like, "Where should we meet up?" I was like, "Let's go to Gun World," and then we could like shoot some guns and then go and do the signing. So,
hell yeah, man.
I think like you're right that it used to be more of the wild west, the internet, and it used to be much more. It's like the same thing with video games. I find where like my son's playing all these games, and I used to be big into like the Game Boy Pokemon game, like Game Boy Color. And I realize he's got them now. And they hold your hand. And they make everything, they nerf everything. Everything's incredibly easy. It's so easy to do everything in the goddamn game. And they explain everything. And back in the day, they didn't explain shit in video games. Yeah. It was like, good luck, bitch. And you were sitting there with like tears in your eyes, ready to break your controller. You didn't know what the hell you were supposed to do.
I remember playing, this is a complete tangent. It was a Sega Genesis game with the main character was an egg, but he was dressed as Indiana Jones. And I got to the second level, and it's just like a fucking 2D, jumper game sort of thing where you're moving on, but it was like puzzles. Never figured out how to get past the second level. There was probably like 40 levels, but it just they don't give a fuck. And there was nothing to help you either. It was like
No, there was no internet to go to.
There
Nobody
might
was
be a
fucking-
900 number in the back that you call for like
Yeah,
$2
no
a
shit.
minute.
Yeah, there was some of that. You could do that. I never did that. I never got that far because my mom was like, "Fucking no, you can't do that." But like, he has so many things at his disposal. He has me. He has we can go on YouTube and look up a video. I don't like doing that though because I think there's a lot of value in going through that frustration and then figuring it out. But the internet was like the same way. You're right. It has become partisan. And it's specifically like conservative leaning now. Like conservatives are coming to because they're the ones that are getting fucked over left and right.
And it was
so
it was
they're
the
ones that are-
opposite for the longest time, dude.
Yeah.
Because I remember growing up, like I had a left leaning bias, but it was mostly because almost all the conspiracy theories were like Bohemian Grove and Skull and Bones, but this is all Republican leaning. And
Right.
I just remember like in my tail end of my sort of like evolution into whatever the fuck I am now, right? But like before I sort of hit level 9,000, I remember thinking like the left wing and the Democrats they can't be good. Like they also have to be bad, but there for some reason there's just like a big gap in all of the research that points to them as being bad, unless you get into the right-wing rhetoric, because the right-wing rhetoric's like, oh yeah, the KKK was all Democrats, and like, and they pull it apart. But it's like, if you've been trained to look at the right as, well, you're just saying that because you're Bohemian Grove and you're Skull and Bones and you're CIA and you're ATF, you know what I mean? Like, go down the line. So it's like, which one of these two do you trust about the other one? But it might not be in like that same regard, I guess.
Isn't it? But it's kind of all right. I think conspiracies, in a way, like we do, what I think is a very cool version of research, which is we get to talk to people, because the internet has made it incredibly gay. Like conspiracy theories are gay now in the same way. Like conspiracy extremists just said it. We figured out how to glitch Pokemon to get Mew. When I was a fucking kid, we would talk to each other in school, and
Yep.
somebody would be like, if you go and you do this really weird series of things in the game, you have to go and talk to this person, then you got to fly over here and do this thing, and then you got to get in the water, and you got to go in this spot, you got to
missing
go up
number.
and down.
I don't know
And
if you guys did this.
Yes, that's exactly
Yep.
what I'm talking about. You got to talk to I don't give a shit, dude. I'm saying it. You got to talk to the dude in fucking like the second city who teaches you how to catch a Pokemon. As soon as you're done, you fly to fucking Cinnabar Island. I'm going full nerd mode.
And you go up and
fly
down.
to Cinnabar Island. You go up and fucking down on the coast. Missing number or missing O pops up, and you can leverage that thing to get like 99 of an item. The only fucking way you figured that out was word of mouth. I don't know
Yep.
how anybody figured. If I want to interview the first fucking dude who figured that out, like
It's
who
QAnon.
figured that weird debacle?
That
Yeah,
was the
QAnon.
real.
That was the real
Yes,
QAnon.
It was Ashley Babbitt. She was the one that released that to the world. And they had to
We
take
got to
her
get
out
rid of this bitch. Like, we got her right where we want her now. Oh, man.
God.
before she
but
drops
like,
Mewtwo on the world. Yeah.
man, like that was where the like there was such a thrill to figuring shit
lore.
like that out. And it was lore. And this conspiracy theories are the lore of real life. And I remember like it was like talking to one person would be like, dude, look this shit up. And you'd go to some obscure website, you'd find these things, you'd connect the dots on your own, and then you'd scream at your friends who didn't give a shit about it, and they'd think that you were schizophrenic. And it just never really worked
Well,
out. But it was really
let
the
me-
same feeling.
Let me interject here because I was just having the same feeling, but with like something slightly different. This is the idea of like the internet destroying these events, these like in-person or family events or like kind of larger events. So I put on the Little Drummer Boy for my kids, and I noticed at some points there's like, it'll go black and then it'll be next scene. And I was like, oh shit, there was a commercial there. That was like pause for a commercial. This was made in 1968, poor claymation. I mean, very, choppy. The lips don't even move to the words. But in 1968, most of America sat down to watch this event called The Little Drummer Boy on the same channel. Millions of people. And it was about Jesus Christ being born, right? At the end, it's like the whole resolution. The kid is like, he likes people again because he's at the birth of Christ. And everybody celebrates. And I was like, this is like very cultural. When you say like make America great again, they were like, you're talking about back then when people kind of did these group cultural things, then went to school the next day and were like, yo, did you see that shit? That was fucking fire. The new Little Drummer Boy shit there. And everyone's like high-fiving, right? Can't do that anymore. We're so fractionated. Look, there's 40 people in here listening to us talk, and no one's watching CNN. No one's watching all the same thing. That must fuck things up.
Degrees
It fucks
of
things up.
separation.
it messes up the elites, sort of, because it's hard for them to point them, but it also helps them because we are fractionated and nobody's kind of doing the same thing.
I think it might
Yeah.
be a net positive though, because the more that you group yourselves up and like fall into these convenient little categories and like all follow the same stuff, that's way easier for them to manage. Like the being kind of like in little fractions, that's on us to figure out how to make that work. But by not being fractioned and everyone like watching American Idol every night, you know what I mean, as a collective nation, like there's no real way out of that. Like the only way to fix that is you pull yourself out of it,
Well, look at what they've
because
done.
you're sucked into it.
They've done that's like the whole boomer generation and even our generation to a certain point. Like we were talking about the effects of nostalgia, and that all kind of keeps you in that same community. But then they could pull off shit like Social Security on you, or they could pull off shit like COVID on that generation. This next generation is so decentralized, it's going to be hard for them to do anything. And that's a good thing. But then also it's so decentralized. This is like a libertarian idea as well. If everybody is like an individual, nobody's moving in the same direction. Good luck getting anybody elected to change it. You understand what I'm saying? The fallacy in that. So like we're all
Right.
individuals doing our own thing, but we also can't move together when we have to do something, which is important sometimes. But then the fatal flaw in that would be an entire boomer generation where they can then do all these psyops on you. You know? It's like, so
I don't know if that's even, I mean, I'm just thinking out loud, but I don't even know if that's even possible to do in one lifetime. Like most people, like I don't think you'd be able to shift into, okay, I'm going to do groupthink because it's good for the nation from, you know, year whatever till the year whatever, and then I'm going to swap back into being independent. I think it goes through these like waves, so it's like your parents and then you and then your grandparents, and then so like everyone has the chance to like become more involved or more detached like throughout their life, I guess. And then if they teach their kids, and then the kids either rebel or they follow along in the footsteps, right? But it's almost like a little binary switch every time.
yeah,
It does
very
make sense though. It feels like the whole especially the electoral system is almost destined to fall apart because it was designed for a unified people who were all sort of subjected, and at least if you use like the metaphor of the TV, you know, you had like six camps, dog. Like back in the day when I had, you know, the knob on the TV, the clunk clunk clunk, you had like six channels that you can go to. It was like Fox 5, WB11 or whatever. And that was all relatively the same kind of shit. So we were all aimed at and absorbing the same information. And so within that context, the electoral system that we all would detach from the TV and look up at least, you know, worked because it was aiming back at us and we were a consolidated group. Now, it's almost like, how can it last much longer? You know, that whole idea of like, there's not going to be a 2024 election, and whatever that means for people on the extreme side, it means Trump is going to prove that they subverted it, and he's going to come back, and his first term is going to be null and void, and he's going to get two back-to-back terms again. But on the much more gracious side, it's like people are going to lose faith in the election system, and you know, because of what we're learning about Russian collusion and all these different things, and maybe we are going to not have a typical democratic election anymore, and things are going to look different somehow in this upcoming one.
And
but it almost
I just
has
realized
to happen.
we started this dumb show and it's going to lead right into this fucking, I'm so not looking forward to the stupidity that 2024 will be and the shenanigans that hopefully they give us, like, cause these lizard people are, they're, it's hard for them to create anymore. I mean, they just
Right.
rehash. So if you rehash
They can't
2020
create.
again, I'm going to fucking skill it. I'm going to be a millionaire. But if they throw something new at us, like something even dumber, or like, you know, they did the COVID thing. And that was like, oh shit, that was like a whole new, they even have me off kilter at first with it. You know, like the first couple of, maybe a month or so. But yeah, I just hope that they rehash whatever they've been doing and we could just laugh at them because it's going to be so dumb, guys.
When you say that the lizard people don't have any creativity, like you're so on the nose with that, and that goes back into like, why would the elites want to target these schizophrenics, right? The ones that can produce all this extra thrill oxide. And a part of that is the like jealousy aspect. It's like, how dare you have this inherent skill to do these creative things? And look at like all the spirit cooking stuff, right? It's like, why do you have these boring ass politicians hanging out with like Marina Abramovich and Lady Gaga and doing this like edgy crap? And think about this too. There's a pipeline, right, where you can get really popular in Hollywood and then like branch into politics. And that's like this ultimate, you know, like Ronald Reagan did it and Trump did it. And so many other people are trying to go through that route. How many people got big in politics and then went to some other industry that was public facing and blew up? It doesn't work the same way. They would go from being in the government to being in like a private pharmaceutical or like a lawyer company, but it never goes from politics down into Hollywood, because that would be like downgrading yourself. So what the politicians do though is
interesting.
Societally, they're higher, right? In the class system, like, if I'm a rich politician, I'm richer than a rich celebrity. Like a celebrity, like, that's cute. You got some fun toys, but I'm like, you know, political.
I control the stocks. I'm Nancy Pelosi, you know?
So if you got that sort of dynamic going on, like, there's no reason for them to ever become an artist. But then there's also like, I want to feel creative. I want to kind of like vicariously live through Lady Gaga and feel like I'm just as important as she is, and that people love me as much as they love her. So I can do that by like showing up to events and doing spirit cooking with her, and we both like eat the, you know, baby cake together and stuff. But then maybe, you know, you go into the back room and you get a little sip out of, you know, Lady Gaga's head or something. And I don't know, man, like, cause it's like, I want some of that creativity inside of me.
It's like, everything's an archetype, right? On like larger or smaller levels. But this is what you're describing is the archetype of the fallen angel, right? So they're like, they can do just about anything and they look great, but they can't create. And it's part of the reason why they hate human beings. And I mean, you can go you can trace that all the way back to
the Nephilim.
Originally to the Nephilim, yeah. And why
there's some Nephilim shit.
Some Nephilim shit. It's like why we're going through what we're going through now. Like this is what the show is about. We think I firmly think that's where it started, and everything that it branches out into is just because they can't create and they hate you, and they want to destroy what God built, and everything from there is just icing on the cake, extrapolated to, you know, Drag Queen Story Hour or whatever fucking dumb shit.
It's really interesting too, because you know, people, when you hear that, like, oh, they can't create, like, no, there is an inherent part of creating things that like speaks to the human experience. Like I said, like I will get in depressive waves if I don't create something, and it just turns out that the only thing that I'm good at is conversation and recording it. And so if I don't do that, it will genuinely fuck with me. And I think that's because there is like an innate, there's something, we can't quantify it, what it does for our spirits as human beings, but it's integral to the human experience. And
create.
So, you know, I wanted to go back for a second too. Like, isn't it very strange? You were just talking about going from art, Hollywood, whatever, into politics. Marina Abramovich just became fucking like the Ukrainian ambassador or some shit.
What?
Like, yeah, dude, she became the American ambassador to Ukraine, I believe. That's
a step up. That's a step
which
up
is
from
wild.
Go from the art world to the politic world.
Exactly, which is wild because Ukraine is rumored to be the epicenter for all of this, how do we put it, child-related debauchery. You know, that if there's a place like the island isn't functional anymore, but now Ukraine is, in some people's minds, and I don't have information to back this up, it's just something that I've heard, I've not looked into, but I hear a lot of people saying that is where it all goes down now, which to me makes a lot of sense, right? Because it's a country that is obviously American interests are entangled within it, especially American interests in regards to, you know, the Biden family and all these various corrupt politicians. And they're a country that's immersed in chaos. And whenever you have chaos, you know, if you look back to like the Haiti thing, where unfortunately after the earthquake, all these children went missing, and you can find these videos of parents saying, you know, these people are coming here, they're supposed to be helping us, instead they're taking our children. I've seen those videos myself. His mother's crying, and those videos get suppressed. I think that these elites, they take advantage of very chaotic situations in countries, and I think
in
they're
our
probably
own country
doing the same thing over there.
Look
And
at
of course, in
Hawaii.
our own country as well. Yeah, Hawaii, right? What the hell is going on there? There's like all these missing kids; they're still unaccounted for, and everybody's just kind of swept it under the rug. And now somebody who is sort of become synonymous, right? Spirit cooking and all this really horrible artwork that involves, like, you ever see Marina Abramovich in a pile of bloody baby dolls?
Yeah.
And also like bones. There's like bones from some sort of animal, but there's also baby dolls mixed within it, and it's very much meant to invoke this feeling upon first glance that she's in a mountain of, like, you know, just ripped apart babies. That's what it looks like. And so now all of a sudden she's the ambassador, the American ambassador to Ukraine. Like, what the fuck is going on there? They don't even, and that's, we've gotten to the part of the game now where they don't give a shit. They don't hide it anymore. We used to have to go to somebody who would tell us what website to go to and what to search for to find all this esoteric weird shit. Now it's like, boom, right on your TV.
They tell you.
Right in plain sight. It used to be hidden in plain sight. It's now it's just in plain sight.
Well, if you don't, this is from a movie called The Conspiracy 2016, and they might have quoted from something else, but there's this awesome quote that I'll paraphrase. But it's like, if you don't give them if you don't give people a story, then they're going to look into it for themselves, and you don't want them to look into it for themselves. So if you just paint the story like, here's Maria Abramovich, they're doing weird stuff, there she is in a pile of, you know, artificial babies or whatever, then that's enough for people to say, oh, that's so weird. There must be something quirky behind that, but like, at least they're acknowledging it. So if they're acknowledging it and it's out in the open, then it can't be that bad, right?
It's a lie by
right.
omission, like the Epstein Netflix documentary, right? So they gave you enough for the normie to be like, that's fucked up, but you're like, it's so much worse if you actually...
Right.
It's really fucked up.
But
Yeah,
but
people
now
will
someone's
close the
like, oh,
book.
I saw the documentary. I'm not arguing. Yeah, he was a bad guy. And it's like, it can stop there. But if there was just radio silence and there was a complete void, then something would have to fill that void. So if you're in the position of power, you might as well fill that void yourself. It's like a simpler version of the Hegelian dialectic, right? Where it's like you've got a problem and a solution, and if you can introduce the problem, then you can also probably introduce the solution. That's the synthesis, antithesis. But that's kind of like a practical version of it, is doing it this way.
Man, listen. I feel like we
Yeah,
could talk
it's
for
8
another
o'clock.
3 hours, but I know you got hard out, and how do we bring this one in for a landing? We covered everything.
We didn't. This conversation
there's still so much
did not
more.
go at all what I thought it was. There is so much more. And dude, we have to have you back because we talking about the whole Lilith thing. I think that was.
Oh yeah,
before
dude,
the
I got my
show
notes.
started.
We didn't even get into it.
Dude, I know. I felt it when we were like an hour and 20 minutes in. I was like, damn it, dude. So we have to have you back, absolutely. And you know, you're a wealth of knowledge. You got a ton of information. I know we only barely scratched the surface. Talking to you is always a blast, but I know you got a heart out, dude. Can you at least tell everybody, you know, about your work one more time, where they can find you, websites to go to?
Yeah, I mean, paranoidamerican.com is the main site. You can find a bunch of comics and I'm doing a bunch of custom toys now too. I haven't posted a lot yet, but you've seen. I've sent you guys some pictures. They're gonna be dope. I just got to get the packaging done. And then on Amazon, if you're a normie and you shop on Amazon or you want something Prime as like a quick gift for somebody, I got stuff from all ages. I even got a children's coloring book called American Cryptids, which is like my blow away biggest seller. No one knows that. Everyone loves the Thrill Oxide and like the comic stuff, but my number one money maker.
I'm getting it too. I'm 100%.
It's a coloring book on cryptids. I got like 4 or 5 coloring books on Amazon.
I don't know if you look at my other show, but I have 2 interviews now with my daughter, and she's fascinated with Bigfoot. She'll sit right here, and I'll just interview her on Bigfoot, and then we go down the conspiracy. So she's getting one of those for Christmas for sure.
Oh, dude, that reminds me too. Just back to when you were talking about like demons and aliens and like ghosts all having a smell. Bigfoot also is reported to smell like sulfur. That's like a very consistent across cultures. So, anyways, I just want to throw that out.
Interesting.
You can find me on Instagram at Paranoid American. I just started onto the YouTube scene this year in like February or March. And I've got a bunch of shows on there now. Paranoid Programming, which is all about doing AI and video. I worked at Disney for 10 years, so I take a bunch of the stuff that I learned there and trying to like show people how to do it. And I got another one I'm starting now called Paranoid Pages, where I basically thumb through old underground comics and like Mason magazines and like, you know, all kinds, like all those Bohemian Grove books I told you about that I got like behind me. I'm going to start just like live streaming thumbing through them and just like, hey, look at this. This is crazy. This is crazy. So yeah, follow me on YouTube. Follow me everywhere.
You're amazing. You're fucking amazing.
You're amazing.
You gotta. No, I'm serious, man. Because I do have to hit you up more because I'm in a very similar field, but I know I can pick your brain dry, man. And now you're an hour from me. Forget it. This guy's amazing. Go follow this dude.
Go and check out his stuff. I think one of the reasons your shit is so awesome is because you could tell like you're stoked about it. And whenever people are stoked about the thing that they're doing, they do a good job at it. You do an excellent job with all the stuff that you do because you're very much into it. So everybody go check that out. Don't forget to go to NephilimDeathSquad.com. Follow us on Twitter. Follow us on YouTube. Also, guys, it is Thanksgiving week, and in honor of the whole thankful thing, instead of doing a traditional episode of the Ravens Watch, I am actually doing a Q&A on Wednesday at 7:30. So if you're a fan of the show and you want to ask anything, I'll be riffing for a good hour and a half before I have to get off and catch Tower Gang, since it's Wednesday night. But that'll be what's going on. So instead of a regular episode, you can catch me on Wednesday doing a live Q&A on the Ravens Watch at YouTube. And just so you guys know, everybody's having a bit of trouble finding it. The Ravens Watch, all one word. Search for it that way and subscribe to me there. I'm almost at 1,000 subscribers, so fucking dope. Top, you got anything?
Yeah, Top Lobster, toplobster.com. Yeah, I'm going to let you get out of here, man. Guys, thank you. Peace out.
The greatest hypnotist on planet Earth is a oblong box in the corner of the room. It is constantly telling us what to believe is real. If you can persuade people that what they see with their eyes is what there is to see, you got them. Because they'll laugh in the face of an explanation that portrays the bigger picture of what's happening. And they have.